Welcome to Unit 3, which is the secondary level, the producers of apparel. In this unit, we will cover modules 8, 9, 10, and 11. And this is just the quick recap for module 8. Remember that full slides are located in the module folder. I strongly encourage you to look at those. These are just a few of those key things that I've pulled out to talk about with you. So what is a product line and who develops it? We're going to look at the role of the merchandiser, the designer, and the producer in this module. When you hear the word line, do you think about Project Runway? They normally create lines. And so lines are how we describe kind of like moderately priced apparel, while collections are what we use to describe really expensive lines in the US or Europe. These are typically divided by things like color or fabric or style, something that really ties them together to make them cohesive. You may have heard of the term knockoffs before. I can remember my first trip to New York City when I was in middle school, and they had knockoffs of Kate Spade purses everywhere. This is something that is a copy of an expensive design in a cheaper fabric or a cheaper pattern, something small that indicates it's a knockoff, but it's normally getting harder and harder to tell. And so there's a little bit of information about knockoffs that I can share in an article with you later. Anchors are what we see each season. So every single year you may buy the same shirt, only it's going to be in a different color or a pattern than it was the previous year. I accidentally did this. I realized I had 3 of the same striped shirts, same tunic design, just different color of stripes. So that's a little bit about what a product line is, and like now looking at how often do these get developed. 4 to 6 lines are typical each year. These are some of the names of the lines and then when they are shown at market. And so if you think about kind of what we've looked at previously, how far in advance people are working in the industry, this really confirms that also. So you've got people working on holiday way before July because that's when it's shown at market and on the runway. So designers, they are the ones that have to keep business considerations in mind. They have to think about the availability and cost of materials, how much it costs to cut and sew, and then the labor that goes into that. They are the ones that typically create and sketch and draw the designs, whether it's digitally or on paper. So what about the producer? Okay, the producer is someone who creates and actually gets the item to us. So the manufacturer does it all from buying the fabric to cutting it to sewing it to selling it and then putting those finishing items on there. So something to kind of note is that you may have one person who handles everything except for sewing, and then they are contracting out the sewing. So the jobber handles the designing, planning, cutting, selling, and shipping, but does not sew. Typically, sewing machines are very, very expensive, especially when we get to this level. And so they will contract this work out. They will put everything that they can together in one facility, ship it somewhere else for it to be sewn, and then it'll come back to a different facility to be finished out. So contractors usually are going to be specializing in one area, which is sewing. Depending on what we're looking at as a subcontractor, they may be contracted to do things like beadwork, especially if it's like a hand beaded item. So there's a little bit more in the full presentation about section work or piecework, and you can look at the picture that I have in there to explain what that looks like. So overall, a product development process. We'll kind of quickly go through each of these stages in this short presentation, but make sure you dig into the full presentation and see all of the details. So stage 1 is planning the line. Designers and merchandisers research the trends, colors, fabrics, figure out what the budgets are going to be for advertising and like the overall collection or line that they're creating. And then they'll create what is called a trend board. And this you normally see on like a corkboard or something, and they've put together a visual or graphic representation of what they're hoping will kind of all come together. Stage 2 is where you see them sketching and draping garments in muslin. That's what you see here in this picture. They look at initial colors and fabrics, and then they figure out, is this something that we can actually move forward with and design, or do we need to discard it here? Price is one of the biggest reasons why designs are discarded in that stage. Then in stage 3, actually developing the design, so all the specifications to create a sample so that it hopefully will be successful. A sample hand is someone who does this. During this phase on stage 3, the cost and fabrication receives a lot of scrutiny to determine if it's going to be feasible. In stage 4, production happens. And so you'll see here, this is a behind the price tag of $118 skirt. You'll see on the left-hand side the manufacturer's cost, and then on the right side the retailer's cost. So why is it needing to cost what it does? But wholesale and retail price points. Okay, so in this stage, you also, which is stage 4, have to look at where are each of the components going to come from? Where is it going to be developed? Then you have to have minimum orders for some items. Some people require a minimum number of styles be ordered, a minimum number of actual items, or a dollar amount. For my previous experience working in the clothing industry in children's apparel, we had to order in some things what is called a run, which would be a 3, 6, 9, 12 month grouping of items, even if all we needed was a 3 month for a customer. So depending on if we thought that could sell for the 6, the 9, and the 12 month, we may or may not order that because we had to order that entire run. There was another brand that required you to spend $500 if you wanted to get the display. Some of them are a lot more, some of them are less, and some of them are not as restrictive. But that is something that happens during that planning production piece, are those minimum orders. So then you have stage 5, which is production. All of these pieces right here have to happen in order for us to actually produce the product. Then they move into sewing after they've done all of the cutting, the bundling, and all of those things. So the sewing has obviously been dramatically altered by technology. Depending on what price point the item is, may depend on the type of production that's happening. A lot of this is done by computers now. It just requires a person, or some cases a robot, to move the fabric around and stack it. But if it's a higher priced garment, you may see this done by one person sewing all of it from start to finish. But typically a majority of our production is going to be in that modular manufacturing system, where you have person 1 sews on the sleeves, person 2 puts on the buttons, person 3 may do the zippers, whatever it may be, but each person is specialized in their particular piece of the garment that they're working on. And so then we finish up the product. We turn everything right side out. The labels are put in. Any type of finishes are added, and then it gets what we call floor ready. So the barcode, cartons are labeled, inspection. If you've ever seen those little stickers inside of your pocket, that's for quality assurance. It typically refers to them checking it to make sure that it meets the standards that they said it would. And then our last phase here is going to be distributing it. So distributing the line and sending this to the retailers by whatever method they are getting it to us. Typically we see products specialized or manufacturers specialized by like a product. And we can see this happen with gender, age, size, categories, and classifications. There are still typically 3 major categories in apparel. and that's women's, men's, and children's, we are starting to see some apparel companies not focus as much on classifying this apparel by like men and women. And we're starting to see this become unisex or gender neutral, where we've got companies that even have products in their stores that are not one direction or the other when it comes to like walking down the middle of the store. They would be gender neutral. And so that's something we're starting to see. I don't know how long that will take for the entire industry to adapt to that, or if they ever will. So for this class purpose, we do still classify everything because the industry classifies it that way as men's, women's, and children's, but I wanted to throw that out there. So now we're going to look at brands and labels for just a second. National or designer brand. These are owned by the manufacturer who advertises nationally. Levi's. Levi's jeans is something you probably all are familiar with. They are a national or designer brand. A private label is going to be owned by the retailer and only found in those stores. Arizona Jean Company is owned by JCPenney's. You're not going to find Arizona jeans at Walmart. So they are a private label. The next few are retail store brands. Obviously these, like the Gap, you see their label in their store. It's typically the brand name of the store itself too. Non-brands, these are labels to which customers may or may not have any importance attached to. You may find these in a discount or an off-price store. So body scanning, this is one of our reflection questions. More than a third of apparel is returned by American women because it does not fit well. So this is an interesting new concept that's coming out. It's been coming out for a long time. I don't know if we'll ever see this pick up, but it's kind of like a fitting room that gives you your measurements and tells you what's going to fit you best. I can't wait to read your thoughts and opinions on this. If you click in that bottom right-hand corner, there's going to be a little webinar that you can review. That's kind of a pretty neat, but it's very long piece about body scanning. And so I look forward for you to dive into this a little bit more and read your reflections on this. Overall, there is a lot to cover over the next 4 modules, but this is just a small snippet of Module 8. If you have any questions or need anything, please reach out and let me know. Thank you.